Hi, I'm the chair of the MIT Enterprise Forum. My name is Christina Dolan, and I want to welcome everybody for coming. And we have a great program today, which you obviously know because you came. The MIT Enterprise Forum really focuses on putting together events that have to do with this very vibrant New York City ecosystem that we have here. And this is another amazing event that was put together by both Tracy Chadwell. Where are you, Tracy? Stand up, say hi. And Karen Salama, you stand up, say hi. Before all of our, Karen comes up on stage and introduces everyone, I just wanted to say that we have an amazing event in April. And for any startups that are interested in sending us an email about your startup for the next event.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you for everyone for being here. So as Christina introduced me, I am Karen Salama. I'm the co-chair of this event with my distinguished panelist and partner in crime, Tracy Chadwell, who you will be hearing from shortly. So on behalf of the MIT Enterprise Forum here in New York, welcome to our first of what we hope will be many in a women's series of women investing in women, the new normal. Firstly, I want to give a special shout out to a few people, Christina Dolan, Tammy Sachs, Meryl Unger, for believing and supporting this incredible vision. I feel like I'm giving an Academy Award speech, so just bear with me. And especially a big thank you to our sponsors and partners who, without them, we could not have made this event happen tonight. So we're so thrilled to be here. And speaking of partners, we are at Microsoft. And speaking of Microsoft, we can't talk about Microsoft without speaking about Melinda Gates, especially since we are talking about women. And Melinda Gates, as we all know, is focused on building the world's largest private foundation on the subject of women supporting women in technology. Microsoft was a perfect venue to host us, clearly based on this sold-out room tonight. And our goal is to create a conversation and foster meaningful dialogue as to how we can all benefit from several paradigm shifts currently underway. So we're here both to celebrate the amazing progress women have made in entrepreneurship and venture capital. And as we always mention with women, it's about sending the elevator down. So the one thing we hope we'll be able to attain at the end of this evening is that all of us will leave here thinking about ways we can empower next generation women leaders in technology. So tonight, we are joined by the esteemed Amy Resnick. Amy, if you want to stand up and give a hand. Amy is the editor of Pensions and Investments, and she'll be joined by the who's who panel of fearless women founders here to give us insights as to the unique challenges and opportunities women face today. But before we begin this panel, I want to be able to introduce a couple of amazing individuals. The first one will be Teresa Nemenshani. Yay, did I get it? Awesome. All right. Our host here at Microsoft, who has generously provided us with this incredible venue at the crossroads of the world. Teresa is New York City's entrepreneur in residence at Microsoft and runs the company's interactions with startups. Teresa works with everyone from investors to top accelerators, partnering up to pick early cycle winners and helping them reach the next level. So without further ado, Teresa, all yours.
Hello, everybody. Being a word from our sponsor, I'll try to make it short and relatively painless. But what an honor to have you all here. I mean, if I think about technology and I think about women, what's more powerful than a group of women and MIT coming together to really paint a picture of the future and really think hard about how we enable more and more of that innovation. I'm a recovering entrepreneur myself, and a couple of years ago may not have thought of Microsoft and startups in the same sentence. It may not have made a ton of sense. I was brought in from the ecosystem to be part of rethinking that. And we really do believe that we're onto something special. Some of it is inspired by our founders and our new CEO, and much of it is inspired by the ecosystem itself. I am the person on the East Coast that turns on the switch for lots of free cloud, knowing how challenging it can be for underrepresented entrepreneurs, people of color, and women for fundraising when there are opportunities to provide extra runway in maybe non-cash ways. I'm always looking to help entrepreneurs that I know are so fantastic and are maybe not getting their due. So we have a program that's called BizSpark, BIZSPARK.com. You can sort of hit me up for a code to get into BizSpark if you're interested in that. And if you're using a lot of sort of storage and compute and then looking into AI and bots and all this stuff, we've got so much cool stuff, and we would love to work with you. So think of us, but most importantly, have a great evening. Thank you so much for being here.
And next up is going to be our keynote speaker, Erin Bagwell. Welcome, Erin. Erin is a Brooklyn-based filmmaker and feminist blogger with a success story worthy of its own screenplay. Last year, her first feature length film, Dream Girl, was shown at the White House and subsequently sold out Manhattan's legendary Paris Theater. She has been profiled in Forbes and the Washington Post, among other media outlets, and appears on Oprah's exclusive Super Soul 100 list. We will begin with a 2-minute trailer of Dream Girl, and then Erin will come up and join us to speak. And actually, did you want to, is there a button that should be pressed here? Okay, perfect.
There's a moment in your life when you know you're destined for something greater. There's a force pulling you to create, explore, build, and lead. There's no map to guide you, no blueprint to help you navigate, just a tiny voice inside of you, telling you to dream big.
I've never been the girl who let things go. When I want something, I'm going to get it.
What I learned about myself, no textbook or class or person could have shown me that. That came from here.
You have unique strengths that you're meant to give to this world. If you have it in your heart that you want to build your own company, don't let anyone or anything stop you.
Any person, male or female, could be a leader. I think anyone is capable. It just so happens that for us it's more complicated. I hope that this is like the generation that changes. Yeah. Because I think that it's time for change.
Thank you, Diana, my lovely assistant, for doing the IT for me so I could hang out in the back and watch that with you guys. Hi, how's it going? Good. How are you? Good. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here at the MIT Enterprise Forum at Microsoft. My mom thinks that I'm like so cool right now because I'm speaking at Microsoft. She couldn't stop texting me. It's an honor to be here among so many trailblazing women and men to hear about women in investing. My name is Erin Bagwell, and I am the creator and director of Dream Girl, which is a documentary showcasing the stories of inspiring and ambitious female entrepreneurs. Our mission is to do more than just tell girls they can be anything they want to be. We actually want to show them what it means to be a leader. And Dream Girl, we had the great honor of premiering the film last May 2016 at the White House, which was an incredible honor. But before we got to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Dream Girl started off as a tiny idea that I had in my living room. I had quit my job about a month before, and I was looking for a big, audacious project. And I was ready to receive something. At my previous job, I felt totally underestimated and unseen. I was regularly sexually harassed. I'm really glad we started coining the term microaggressions, because I feel like that was like my entire existence was like weaving in and out of these microaggressions. And every day I was just feeling totally less than. But while I was in that office, I started to see the women in my life differently. You know, I had a tribe of coworkers that I could commiserate with, and I became really obsessed with feminist content. I think understanding the conventions that we as women, and especially women of color, face gave me a sense of strength and a sense of power. It gave me a sense of knowledge, and it actually gave me the courage to quit my job. I even started a feminist storytelling blog called Feminist Wednesday, and we have a big purple beaver as our mascot. We send out content every Wednesday, so you can sign up for our newsletter. And a couple of the stories that we started to feature in Feminist Wednesday were about female entrepreneurs, these incredible, elusive warrior women who were investing, women who were getting investment. They had coworkers, they had employees. I thought that this was like such a dream to be a female entrepreneur, and I think I became so obsessed with her because I wanted to be like her. I wanted to feel that freedom outside of that 9-to-5. So in my one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, this light bulb went off: make a movie about female entrepreneurs. And I thought this was like the best idea I've ever had in my life. I was like, move over, lean in, and girl boss. Erin Bagwell is coming for you. But I thought there's no way that this hasn't been done before. So I did what every millennial woman is taught to do when she doesn't know an answer, and I Googled it. And I couldn't find anything that really resonated with me. I found hundreds and hundreds of films about male entrepreneurs, but how could there be none about female entrepreneurs? So as a creative, I studied film in college, and as a woman, I felt so overwhelmed by the idea of having to raise money for this. Like, what the heck am I going to do now that I have this idea? And I thought the easiest thing for me to do was to put together a trailer and to put together a crowdfunding campaign. I'm a creative. I could put together a really beautiful trailer. Maybe if I could put together something really nice that could emotionally resonate with people, and I could try to raise money online. So I started down that crowdfunding path, but my creative bubble burst really, really fast. I don't know how many of you guys have done crowdfunding campaigns, but they're so hard. And I realized that my social net worth could only get me, so far, and I wasn't actually getting in the money that I needed to raise the project. I went to every meeting. I took every phone call. I spoke on every podcast I could find. I became really, really immersed in this work. And every day I tried to raise the money to make our goal, which was $57,000. And about 5 days before the campaign, we had only raised $34,000. And at the time, I was pretty sure my dream was dead in the water. I had never felt this heaviness and this exhaustion before. I was putting in all my time and love and energy, and it didn't matter. It wasn't good enough. And to make it worse, Kickstarter sends you these little notifications on your phone every time you get a backer. So when it was really slow, I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. However, during the campaign, my strategy for raising money got a little bit smarter, and I started to put my backers into categories. So I had little niches that I would focus on, like entrepreneurs, feminists, life coaches, moms, college students. And after a while, I started to notice which groups I was monetizing from. And life coaches turned out to be my most engaged backer. They had the money to spend for life coaches, and they were very aspirational. So I went after the top 100 life coaches in the States, and I magnetized Marie Forleo. Do you guys know Marie? Okay, you all need to Google her, yes, those of you who know her. She is a business and strategy life coach. She runs a community called B School, which is a business school for women. And she produces a video every Tuesday called Marie TV to promote her brand. And for some reason, Marie was answering my emails. We got on a call, and I really, really fell in love with her story. I'm like recalling all of this now again. She saw me as a filmmaker and as a creator, and she said that she would support my campaign. And I even designed a little graphic for her that we put in her newsletter for over 300,000 people. So the next day, when Marie sent that newsletter out to 300,000 people, we were funded in 3 hours. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree, and tears just streamed down my face. I remember just sitting on my little couch and crying hysterically, and Marie actually called me and was like screaming, and she was like, we're gonna make the goal, we're gonna make the goal. And I was like, who are you? The numbers kept going up and up and up, and eventually we made over $100,000 to produce the film. Still thinking about it now, I absolutely get goosebumps every time, and I can't believe that we get to work with such an incredible influencer, and as you saw, Marie is featured in our film. After the campaign ended, I got right to work. I was very nervous. I was like, here we have all this money. I better go, 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 go. So we got to work. I found the women to interview for the film, and I truly felt like this was a project that I was born to make. Production was really a dream. I hired an all-female crew, which was awesome. It was so incredible to be on set with so many passionate and technical women. It was like an incredible experience, and it almost felt like we were creating a family. At that time, I also magnetized a co-founder, which was also very helpful. Once we were finished with the film, I'm actually an editor, so I got right to work again, editing and figuring out the story and crafting the entire vision for the film. And I was pretty nervous because about a year and a half into the process of post-production, I was getting married in 2 months, and we started running out of money. Thankfully, to help shape the story, we were working with these two really brilliant executive producers, Linda Goldstein and Baus de Jong, who are Hollywood veterans, and they would give us notes every month about how to make the story better and better and better. And I remember this one cloudy afternoon in September. We got on a call with them, and they had a really weird tone in their voice about the film. I had just finished a rough cut, and I was really nervous. We were waiting on like final feedback. You know, I was really excited, but also very nervous. They're very tough. And I was at a place mentally where I thought we were kind of finishing up the film. We were wrapping it up. I had actually shown the film to my parents. And we got on a call with them, and they just said these really simple words: I think you should lose a couple of characters in the film. And it sounded pretty innocent at first. Okay, like a couple here, a couple there. But once we started to pull this thread, it unwound the entire story. And we realized that not only did we need to reshoot and rework it, but we needed to restart it, which was really, really devastating. And I remember my heart just sinking to the bottom of my feet, and knowing too that our budget was dwindling added this intense pressure and stress that I had never felt before. I also mentioned that I was supposed to be getting married in 2 months, and my husband and I was also guilt-ridden because we were debating whether or not we were going to go on a honeymoon, which was also really horrible. Literally, I didn't know what I was going to do, but what I did know is that I was going to work my ass off to make sure that this was going to be the best film I could ever possibly produce. And if that meant putting in more time and more effort and more energy, I was going to figure it out and figure out how to make it happen. So my co-founder and I got back to the drawing board. We recreated all the stories. We figured out all the structures for the film, and we put together a pitch deck to pitch some angels. Thankfully, throughout that process, I had started to magnetize some really amazing high net worth women who I could pitch to help us get the finishing funds to complete the film. As fate would have it, one of the women that we interviewed for the film is Joanne Wilson, who has, those of you know, has invested in over 90 women and people of color. And she emailed me back right away when we pitched her, and she wanted to meet with me. I remember taking the one train up to the West Village, and I wore this black jumpsuit and this, actually I'm wearing a pretty similar outfit that I wore at that time, now that I'm thinking about it. And I was so nervous. I have never pitched an angel before. I did not know what that process was going to be like. I did not know how it was going to be received. And even though I was super nervous, Joanne Wilson saw me as a business person. She looked me in the eye. She took me seriously. She asked me great questions. We had a great repertoire. It was really incredible. And I asked her for $50,000 to finish the film, and she said that she would fund me $100,000. She wrote the check for $50K herself, and then she sourced 5 other angels in her network to help us to make sure that we had enough money this time to finish. She totally believed in our dream, and my mind was really, really blown. I remember again, so after the meeting, it was a pretty balmy fall day, and I beeline to the first ice cream truck I could find. And I remember just sobbing, calling my co-founder, eating ice cream, and just celebrating the power that we had been seen in this crazy way. I've done enough research about entrepreneurs to know this is not how this stuff happens, and I felt so privileged and excited about it. Tonight's theme is Women Investing in Women, the New Normal. But I can honestly say that without Marie and Joanne and many other women, the reason we went to the White House, the reason that I was noticed by Oprah is because of women in my community. So this is actually my regular, and I feel pretty privileged to have that happen. I think that each of us has the power to uplift one another, and that is truly immeasurable, which is why one of my other new big goals and dreams is to become an investor, to be able to fund other women's projects as well as my own. You know, being a filmmaker from Brooklyn is a pretty tough thing to do. I was just at a meeting actually with a bunch of filmmakers, and all of them went around and said the exact same thing, that they needed money to start or finish their projects. And Hollywood doesn't really make it easy on us. 7% of all directors for the last 250 films were directed by women, which is actually a decrease from the last 2 years, which is pretty depressing. And I think this stat highlights that even at the highest levels of success, women filmmakers need more champions, and not only in the film industry, but obviously in all of our industries. Women globally are struggling to get their businesses and their ideas funded, and that's what we're here to talk about today, to talk about the power of our time, our energy, and especially our investment. But before we dive into this incredible panel to learn more, which I'm really excited to hear, I want each of you to make me a promise. Not only to investigate how to bring Dream Girl to your communities, because I would love to share it with all of your networks. It's only $2.95 to see the film publicly. But that you will reach into your networks, your contact lists, and you will extend a hand to bring up the next generation. Because we need you, and we are so ready to meet you. Thank you so much.
Do we need these? Oh, we weren't sure? Okay.
You're incredible.
Okay.
Cindy and I were both just crying because we think you're so incredible.
Hi, I'm Amy Resnick. I'm the editor of Pensions and Investments, and I'm thrilled to be here. Really excited to be in front of this room. I spend most of my time focused on the institutional investor world, where there are starting to be more women, but not as many as you would think. And I saw something today in our internal communications that the Rukia Adams, who is now the chairwoman of the Oregon Investment Council, has recently taken the step to tell her fellow council members and the state's chief investment officer that she wants to set out new priorities for the next few years. In addition to addressing liquidity and complexity within the state's portfolio, she wants to examine the challenges facing private equity investors because of the downward trend in returns and in sourcing new businesses to invest in. They're concerned that the long-term mean return is going to be closer to public equity rather than private equity. And the answer to that problem, not just for Oregon, but for the billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar large institutional investors and the private equity funds that they invest through, is going to be sourcing growth companies. And one of the places I think that they need to start doing that and is from women founders. So, and that's going to be no small challenge, because as of last year, according to research from KPMG, there are now 41% of the institutional investors that they surveyed last year said that they already have an emerging managers program, which means that they're investing with women and minority-owned managers who are more likely to invest in women and minority-owned businesses than others. But that's 41%. It's up from 33% in 2015, so it is improving. However, the number of investors that already have a mandate to invest in women actually went down. So it's certainly not a clear linear track that things are on, but I do think that there are a lot of people talking about it, more people than I've been in my role for 5 years now, and the increased awareness of everything from corporate governance, which includes the issue of board makeup and who's making the decisions, both at the investment manager level and at the company level, is only increasing, and it's now coming from places like State Street Global Advisors. I don't know if everybody saw, but our young woman who's challenging the Wall Street Bull is going to be with us until next February. That was announced earlier today, and I think rooms like this across the country, around the world, are where these topics are going to be addressed and where these issues are going to be changed. And that's about all I have to say. I'm going to turn it over to this panel of amazing women, but I will start just with quick introductions. All the way down on my left is Tracy Chadwell, who you've heard about already, venture capitalist, private equity investor, founder, woman extraordinary and woman investor. Next to her is Jessie Draper, founding partner of Halogen Ventures, as well as a creator. One thing I have heard from these women as we've been preparing this is that we have founders who are investors and investors who are founders and women who are investing in other women on the panel, and it's all kind of mixed up together, which is fantastic because it amplifies everybody. Next to Jessie is Cindy. Cindy Whitehead is CEO of the Pink Ceiling. She has quite a story, and I'll let her tell it herself. Next to Cindy is Jessica Traver, CEO and co-founder of Intuitap Medical, who is brings an engineering background as well as a founder's spirit to this panel. Next to Jessica is Anna Pikovsky-Auerbach, CEO and founder of Work. And next to Anna is Tanya Yuki, CEO and founder of Shareably. And again, I will let them introduce themselves, and then we will get started with questions, and we will have plenty of time for questions from the audience.
Hello? Great. Okay, here we go. So I'm Tracy Chadwell, and I have recently started a venture capital fund called 1843 Capital, which is a fund that invests in technology companies with at least one female founder. And the number 1843 comes from the year that Ada Lovelace wrote the first computer program. And I just love bringing Ada's name up over and over and over again when I explain the name of my fund. But thank you so much for coming. I really, really greatly appreciate it. I think we're going to have a great conversation, and I'd like to introduce you to Jessie Draper.
Thank you. I am Jessie Draper, and similarly to Tracy, I run Halogen Ventures. We do early stage investing in female-founded consumer technologies. Actually, one of my companies is here, Work. Anna is a fantastic founder. And then I also am creator and host of a show called The Valley Girl Show that was nominated for an Emmy about a year ago.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy Whitehead. I'm the founder and CEO of the Pink Ceiling. And after building and selling 2 pharmaceutical companies, that is the new venture. I'm most known, and my story is always interesting because I got what the media called female Viagra through the FDA, and then I turned around and sold it for $1 billion. And thank you.
Actually, I think it was 1.5 or something like that. just to be clear.
Couple exits. And after exits, I think you get to have an opportunity to think about, what do you want to do? And for me, it was a front row lesson in what it means for women not only to advocate for themselves, but for each other. And I thought there were a lot of pink ceilings we still needed to crash through, one of which is investing in women. So I'm delighted to introduce you to Jessica, who I have invested in.
Hi, I'm Jessica Traver. I am co-founder and CEO of Intuitab Medical, which is a medical device company that is creating a device to help physicians accurately place spinal needles for epidurals and spinal taps. Yeah, it's a big problem. It's my first time founding a company, so learning along the way, and it's been a really great process, and I'm just lucky to have people like Cindy who are supporting us and being a part of the female entrepreneurship ecosystem.
Hi, I'm Anna Auerbach. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Work. Thank you for doing the epidural placement. I wish I had that 4 years ago with my son. So our marketplace focuses on providing women with flexible work to keep them on the leadership track. It took me a while to get to entrepreneurship, but I'm happy I'm here and so happy to have amazing investors that focus on women like Jessie.
Hi everyone, I'm Tanya Yuki. I'm the founder and CEO of Shareably, and we are turning 4 in like 2 weeks, which is kind of crazy. It's either like a year or 20. I can't tell. It depends on the day. But we're the leading provider of big data and analytics that analyzes how human beings express themselves and behave across many of the sort of walled gardens like Facebook and Instagram, and transform that into intelligence about what people care about and what they value. So really excited to be here.
And I invested in Tanya.
Thank you. So, speaking of walled gardens and crowdsourcing, as we heard earlier, we crowdsourced some questions from some of the women who are here to get us started. So I'm going to, I've grouped some of them together because, as you imagine, there were some repeats. But we have a great crowd. And so what I wanted to start with is, to all of our panelists, how and when did you know that you had it in you to start a company? Anybody want to jump in on that?
I can start. This is something I think about a lot because I always say, for years I thought being an entrepreneur required a specific kind of DNA, and I just didn't have that DNA for some reason. But I moved to the US as a 6-year-old from the former Soviet Union, as a refugee actually. And so as many immigrants and refugees, you work very hard, but you also recognize you're given this exceptional opportunity to start your life over through the help of others. And so everything I'd done for my whole career has been about working hard, but also equally trying to create opportunities for others. And as a 22-year-old, that sort of took the form of you either make money or you do good. And so I was in nonprofit and philanthropy for a while. And the reason I got to entrepreneurship was I finally got to this point where I realized there was this major glaring problem. And I felt like I was going crazy because I did the same thing that Erin did as I Googled it. And I was like, there's got to be a solution. And there wasn't one. And my big glaring problem was that as an ambitious person that also happened to have a child, I felt like there were no work opportunities that supported women in getting through those difficult, particular early years. And I looked around and I wasn't the only one. In fact, 30% of the most talented women were leaving the workforce entirely after having a child. And they would have stayed in the workforce if they had flexible work. So talk about having a moment of like going crazy. You're like, this is so obvious. Like, this is not rocket science, actually. Like, they're saying they want flexible work and there's no place to find it. And so it took a moment of desperation of watching some of my closest friends, I went to Harvard Business School, like from Harvard, opting out or wanting to opt out, to realize that somebody had to do the solution. And if it wasn't going to be me, then this was not going to be solved for yet another generation for women. And I think for me, entrepreneurship was, I guess, sort of like the opportunities forced onto you when you're like, if I don't do this, nobody else will. And I think it was, I always say I've never skydived, but I feel like you just take one step in front of the other and eventually you're just outside of the plane. And that was exactly how starting a company was. Honestly, if I think I knew everything that it takes to like lead this company and get through everything we've gone through, I think I probably would have been too scared to do it, but I just put one foot in front of the other and eventually you're just suddenly outside of the plane.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
My footnote to that is I was fueled by injustice. And I think that's often true of an entrepreneur, is that you really are fixing something. In fact, I've heard somebody else say that, the greatest entrepreneurs have some version of a chip on their shoulder that they're out to prove. And I think that's absolutely true. As I look at other female founders who come to me or anything else, it was really I think that's the sort of subtext of it, is the fueled by the injustice of it all. It didn't make sense.
How long did it take any of our founders to get from idea to execution? Or how long did it take you to get outside the plane?
I mean, I have a couple answers to this question, but the first one I'll share is, I ran a talk show for 10 years, and I still don't feel like we made it with that talk show. So, that's one entrepreneur story. But then, as far as the fund I'm running now, I think I've had this idea for so long, and you always look back at your life and think, in the time I was running this show and creating this huge network, I interviewed over 500 entrepreneurs, including Mark Cuban and Sheryl Sandberg and the Tinder founders, and I didn't realize that I had actually been kind of preparing for this fund now, and actually a lot of my investors I had on my show and had created these relationships with, because at the time I started there wasn't a technology talk show. Now there's a whole bunch of them, but I think also through that I found, to resonate with what Cindy mentioned about, you have a little chip on your shoulder, there's always some sort of injustice you're trying to cure. Through my show, it was a technology talk show, we interviewed startups, and I couldn't find any women to interview in the first couple of years. It was early days of YouTube, and so about 5 or 6 years ago, I basically started just seeking out women, and I really give a lot of credit to fashion technology and fashion brands, because that's, I really think, why we're starting to see incredible women like Cindy, who's in healthcare, putting themselves out there. I think before then women were afraid to put themselves out there, and it was like pulling teeth to get a female CEO on my show, because I think they just didn't want to put themselves out there. So I started trying to interview 50% women in technology about 5 or 6 years ago, and then I kind of look back. So I don't know, it's taken a long time to get here. I still feel like I have a long way to go.
Anybody else?
I guess my path is a little different than most. Our company was founded through kind of a spin-off of a fellowship that we went through. So this fellowship started at Stanford University originally, and now tons of universities have their own versions of them, but it's called biodesign. And so we actually spent about 4 months rotating in local Houston hospitals where I'm from, just pretty much shadowing physicians and identifying problems and kind of being a fly on the wall, talking to nurses and techs and hospital administrators, and essentially looking for problems, and then going through a very vigorous process of, doing all the research and seeing which one would actually make the most sense to start a company out of. So I'd say once we actually hit the ground running with development and knew which need we were going to focus on, we actually moved pretty fast. I think it was the first week of February when we actually started creating doing concept generation. And so it's been a little over a year. We've already done a proof of concept prototype. We're about to do cadaver testing. So we moved relatively quickly, I think. And I think that's really because we had such a deep understanding of the need that we were addressing before we even began to start to create our device. So I can't stress how important that is, to actually being able to move quickly and iterate quickly. And I think that's a huge part of what allowed us to be kind of where we are now.
Anna? Did you want to add? No, just holding. Okay. Tanya, anything you want to add? No. Okay. Who were your biggest champions? Obviously, you've all been great advocates for yourselves and your work and your funds, but who else, where were you finding sources of support, emotional and financial?
I'd like to give a shout out to someone on the panel, because Cindy Whitehead is actually one of my investors and huge champion, and just a fantastic support in all different areas of my life.
I'm gonna continue the love and give a shout out to Jessie. So I think it's interesting as we were talking about how long it takes women to get up and running. I think there's greater pressure for women to get up and running faster, and there's been a lot of statistics, and I'm sure everybody will touch on them at some point, but the venture capital space is very challenging for women. There's not a lot of VC partners. There's not a lot of capital flowing to women. One of the biggest challenges is that, and this is a psychological phenomenon, that women are often valued based on past performance, not on future potential, which means that you have to get to traction faster. And so I think one of the most important things for women to have as champions early on is somebody that actually believes on the promise of what you are building. Because the thing that drove us nuts early on is everybody asked for traction, but traction takes some sort of investment, I think. And so that was what was really hard. And Jessie was one of our earliest investors to come on board and really believed in the promise of what we were doing. And I think having her on board and having an institutional investor is really, we always say Jessie was one of the most important dominoes that tipped. And then, we were fortunate enough to have 5 other VC investors come into the round. But I think it's really important to have a champion that really believes in the potential and doesn't, hold you accountable to traction that's not possible at the stage you're at.
Amy, if I were to rewind back, early days, did I have a champion in my career? I think my answer is no. I didn't have a mentor. I really looked around and didn't have it, but ultimately, obviously, had success in going out there. I'd started in big corporate. I'd gone progressively smaller till I was crazy enough to start something for myself, and along those ways found like minds. But it was interesting because after having built 2 companies, come out of that, and had in the last year getting to spend time with people like Jessie and go out and speak at events like this, what was astonishing to me is in that decade that hadn't changed. So I think the spoken truth that we talk about that's really holding women back is access to capital, right? If you look at the PitchBook data, just a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we're down to 2% of the VC money went to women in 2016. 2%. We're down from 7 before. What I think the unspoken problem is mentorship. And as I went to these conferences and was privileged to talk in front of rooms like you, many women approached me afterwards and said, will you talk to me? Will you mentor me through this? And I started doing some homework. 80% of women say they can't find a mentor. 90% of them wish it were a woman. And that started inside of the Pink Ceiling. Obviously, through strategy or investment, we try to propel female-led or focused businesses. But I actually opened a Pinkubator that is entirely a mentorship program because that was such a gap. And I think the only way, if I'm hopeful that I can make some small mark in terms of changing it, I not only need to change it with money, I need to change it with mentorship too.
Yeah,
Tanya? So go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd say before Cindy, I didn't have any mentors, any female mentors, which is very surprising too, because we had a lot of support from the Texas Medical Center, which is where the program that our company came out of is based at the Texas Medical Center. And we were the inaugural class of this fellowship, so there was a lot of attention on us, and everyone wanted us to succeed, and there was a lot of support thrown our way, but it was never, and it's a lot of like, oh, if you have any questions, just ask me, or like people that are like, oh, I'll love to be involved, or I'll help you, and but like they don't actually help you, or they'll give you like 30 minutes, and you're like, I can't. My problems last longer than 30 minutes. I don't even know where to begin. And it's just some stuff where it's like, I don't need like the answer to, what my regulatory strategy is going to be moving forward. I need support for all the roller coasters that you're going through, the ups and downs, and the investors that are horribly mean, and the, just things that you can't even quantify, I feel like. And so that's why I agree it's so important, but it's so hard to find real mentorship. I mean, whether you're a woman or not, I assume. But yeah, so I agree.
Tanya?
Sure, I'll weigh in. I think my experience was a little different, or maybe an extrapolation of that. I came here from Australia about 10 years ago, and I literally knew no one. No, there are no startups in Australia. Well, not at the time. Now we sort of figured out that you can do that. But, there's no venture capital in Australia. There's kind of nothing. I didn't even really know that any of this existed. So I think I got very good early on, and probably am still quite good at finding people to help me answer very specific things at specific points in time. So it's not really mentorship, but it's like kind of stitching together like hundreds of people to make one really good mentor. And I think part of it is because the things that cross your desk or the stuff that happens as you're raising venture capital, hiring people really fast, bringing on clients, scaling tech, doing all sorts of things. There's probably, I learned, I guess, pretty quickly, there was sort of no one person that could really help me with all of that, and not even really any 2 or 3 people. And even some of the people who can help you in year 1 can't help you in year 3, or can't help you as you're, thinking like, should I rebrand my company? Like, there are all sorts of things. So I think I became really good at sort of sensing, like almost like a truffle pig, like who might be able to help me with this one thing, and going after it. Because if you don't, like I think maybe when you have a job and you have a question, you can afford to be quite measured and planned about, I'm going to approach this person, I'm going to bump into them. Now you're like, I need it now, like I need it right now, or this is going to die. So yeah, I think you just kind of get rid of any sense that you know best, or that you can find the answers yourself, or that it's even worth trying to struggle bust through stuff that you have no idea what to do, and sort of go for it in that way.
Okay. That's fantastic. Okay, so this is a question that I'm going to throw out to the panel. Given your experience, either as a founder or as a funder, or both, what opportunities and challenges does the future hold for women founders, specifically in tech? And do you think there's a particular vertical that offers more opportunity, either because it's uncharted territory, or because something that you've seen in women entrepreneurs that you've encountered makes that a better space versus something else? Tracy?
So one of the things that I really feel still affects women in tech is getting attention. When I'm out with my fund, I hear people say to me things like, but Tracy, the best companies always rise to the top. And it's still a matter of some unconscious bias. I was a judge the other night at an augmented reality and virtual reality contest at Google, and there were only 2 investors in the entire room, and both of us were women. So seeing that 97% of the venture capitalists are men, they're still not getting the attention, especially as we get into the Series A and the Series B levels. So they're still not getting adequate levels of funding. And we were talking a few minutes ago about the 2.19% of total dollars. Women, by number of companies, are getting funded more broadly, but still the dollar levels to build the larger companies just aren't there. But there's massive opportunities and massive numbers of qualified women, even though I actually had a woman venture capitalist say to me, oh, Tracy, you'd be so proud. I have one female founder in my portfolio. And I said, one? And she said, oh, well, there's no women in tech. So it's not, unconscious bias is something we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it on almost a daily basis. People surprise me pleasantly, which is a wonderful thing, but it just still exists, and it's just still a fight that has to be fought.
I'm just going to piggyback on that because you made me think of something interesting. So I think you're right on the getting noticed, and I think it's easy to get noticed for being a woman in tech, but it's hard to get noticed for having good tech. And that kind of drives me crazy. I find that when I get contacted by tech press, I don't know if you've got any tech reporters, I challenge you to talk to me about my tech, as opposed to the fact that I'm a woman, which is the one thing that I can't control. And I'm not even complaining. It's just an observation that I found. Like, it's wonderful to get the mention, but I find that you become sort of famous for being a woman in tech, but no one has any idea if your tech is any good. They don't care about what it does. They don't care about like how much you put into that, and that it's like the core of everything that you do. I just thought of that. That's a really interesting point. I thought it was.
I think there's huge opportunity for women, and they're to tag along to what Tracy's saying, they're not getting funded at an early stage. They're not getting big checks at an early stage. Everyone wants to bet on them when they've heard of the company, when they have 20 million in revenue, but it's those early checks. And so what I pride myself on at Halogen is really just betting early, bigger. And so we write $150,000 to $500,000 checks as an initial check size, and that's pretty big as far as, early stage first money in investors go. And I have to tell you, more often than not, it really is so disappointing. I don't typically lead investments, and I have, incredible female founders running just life-changing technology companies saying, okay, Jesse, we still need 300,000 more. And I tell them, go get a whole bunch of 10s and 25s. And unfortunately, that's what women have to do all the time. They have to hustle a lot more. And, I think that women are a little more organized, so I think they're better at hustling a little bit more. But that said, we need men to bet on us too. And I have a lot of great male investors and male champions, and I think it's, it's a group effort. It's not just about, I feel like I always get on my soapbox because I invest primarily in women, but we define that as a female in the founding team, and that can be a founding team of 5. I haven't had to make an exception past co-founders because we see tons of deals, but I'm open to a founding 5. I just want to see more women in leadership positions. But I think that's, and then as far as to answer the second part of your question, what opportunities we're seeing for women, I think people think, oh, fashion, tech, beauty. I see everything, especially because Cindy's one of my investors. I mean, I see tons of healthcare, and I feel like healthcare, fintech, healthcare for women and female-focused products is wide open. I mean, I was the first investor in a company called Flex, which is an alternate tampon device. And I said, what? You've raised $1 million from who? She's like, a whole bunch of men. I'm like, that's incredible. How did you do that? And it's a testament to Lauren Schulte, who runs this company. She's just incredible. She's like, I got out my little female reproductive system, and I showed him how it worked, like in the doctor's office. And I thought it was hilarious. And she and I actually have this really funny rapport where this is like way TMI, just get ready for it. But every month during my menstrual cycle, I'm texting her being like, can we reuse it? Can we do this? And these are things that women investors can do. Like, we can focus on this. I have a breast pump company. I mean, there's so much, like Cindy runs like a sex drug company. I mean, there's so much opportunity for women in healthcare that is just wide open for the taking. So I'm excited about healthcare.
Great. Anybody else?
So
Anna?
The interesting thing is that First Round Capital just did an analysis that, I don't know if anybody saw it in the fall, that over 10 years of investing, their female-founded companies outperformed the baseline by 63%. So, by the way, everybody should be investing in women because it's just good business. And so that's the bottom line, is it's just a better investment opportunity, be you a woman or a man investor. The other thing that's interesting, and Cindy and I were talking about this prior to the panel, is women tend to found things out of necessity and out of this passion moment and this like, aha, why hasn't anybody else solved this? That is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it becomes your other baby. You're so driven. You're obsessed with this idea. You are the best positioned person to solve it. The curse is that, unfortunately, when you speak to male investors, which are going to be 95% of the people you talk to in terms of investors, you have to get over the hurdle that you're a lifestyle company. I can't actually begin to tell you how many times male investors assume that this was like an agency or a passion project or something that's not serious and not a tech company, and didn't ask us about the tech that we're building. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges. But back to the opportunity set, I think the interesting thing is women hold the purchase decisions for 70, 90% of households, depending on the survey. And so the reality is there's massive opportunities for women to create products for women, because that's who's buying the stuff anyway. And similarly, investors should be investing in women because those companies just do better over the long term. So I think the sky is limitless. I think one of the challenges does come back to mentorship. I think we're going to see a couple of the same themes. I think it is terrifying for women to start a company when they look out there and see statistics like 2% of VC funding last year went to women-founded companies. There were only, I think, 359 companies last year in the entirety of the US that got any venture funding. I mean, these are not great statistics. And so the more we can talk about the success stories, the more we can have conversations like this, the more we can hold up the successes as attainable, I think the more likely we are to have people taking advantage of those opportunities that are out there.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to jump in on that one? Okay, moving on. We talked a little bit about this in the last answer, but specifically, do you think there's a kind of funding that is more appropriate or accessible or best for women-owned or women-founded companies?
So I talk about this a lot because this is one of the things that drives me crazy. Venture capital funding is a discrete business. It's only supposed to be there for a very small segment of the companies that are started up that could reach $100 million in revenues within 5 years. And that's just a small number of the companies. That doesn't mean there aren't a lot of companies, and whether it's specific to female founders or specific to all founders, there's a lot of wonderful companies being funded out there that are great businesses that could produce great employees, great products for this world, but aren't necessarily the types that are venture capital fundable. So one of the nice things is that there is a variety of funding out there now. There's a lot of, first of all, there's a lot of grants. So if you're doing anything in the social impact space, there's tons and tons of grants available. There's also a lot of new sources of debt funding, which is fantastic. And I would say the majority of businesses actually should be looking to debt funding. One of the things I like to sort of joke about, but not really joke about, is you should be using your credit cards. You should be taking cash out of your credit cards instead of coming to me, because guess what? They want 29%, I want 400%. So I'm really, really incredibly expensive. I'd like to say I have some value add as well, but it's incredibly, incredibly expensive money, and only is to be used in some very discrete use cases. So, and if you are interested in looking up some of the resources, I actually have them listed on my website at 1843capital.com. So go ahead and take a look under resources, and you'll find all of them.
Anybody else have ideas other than lots of small funders, as Jesse said last time?
I mean, there's crowdfunding. There's so many different. I mean, it depends what stage you're at, what type of company. Look at your competitors. How many entrepreneurs are here? Great. Oh, I love it. Okay. So it depends what kind of company you're creating, but if you are interested in finding venture money, I recommend you do look at your competitors or companies in similar fields and see who invested in them, typically through Crunchbase, or you can find some articles on them and approach those. Be really targeted, because pitching just takes so much of your time. So don't just have a bajillion meetings. Be very, very focused about who you're going after. That's a real number.
It's also, it can also be frustrating because, as many people on the panel have already talked about, this early stage fundraising is a really weird space to be in sometimes, because you're typically looking for either friends and family or angel investors. And, a lot of times, especially in the healthcare space, people get money just from doctors or whatever, but they kind of just give you some money and then just leave. And you're like, oh, I mean, it's great. Now I have money, but there's no help there. You're not actually getting smart money, is what they call it. And it's really, really hard to find these people sometimes, too. I mean, there are angel networks, and that's really great. And pitching in front of them is great. And if they are focused in your, area, I guess. But I think it's really hard to find the people that will give you the early stage money and that will actually help you along the way, that aren't just kind of like, oh, it's fun to invest, so we're going to give you $10,000, and then, oh, I have a friend, he might give you money too, and then you have 500 people on your cap table, and it's a nightmare. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. I don't really know what the right thing is for that or how it's going to develop, but I think it's still very much a challenge getting your early stage venture funded by people that can actually be a value add to your company at that stage.
Okay. We talked a little bit about when to look for VC funding or other sources of funding. What other pitfalls that we haven't already touched on would you warn people who are looking for funding? Why go credit card rather than venture capital funder? And at what point in time are those decisions best made?
Because I do a lot of consumer technology, I'd say definitely use your credit card for any inventory-related companies. But then, personally, there is such thing as a bad check. Like Jessica was saying, I actually took investment from one guy, or was in the process of taking it, and he was, never let people in under your minimum, like never do it. And it's always like the biggest headaches. And he, this is a safe place, right? Like how publicized this is going to be. No, I'll share. But he, within a week, he had asked to meet 3 of my companies, including our lovely work founders. And I've never had this happen where, I connect my companies with investors and potential investors all the time. And I love LPs who want to invest in my companies directly as well. And within 5 minutes of each call with my founders, they called me and were like, who is this guy? He's horrible. He's so condescending. He's mean. Like he was just, the stories, like I don't even need to get into, but
the part that Jesse is not mentioning is when we were on a Google Hangout for this guy and my co-founder actually texted me, we need to get off the call. He's such a jerk. And it pops up on the screen.
It's so much better than that, because imagine being the investor who gets the email from the other potential investor being like, never in my 20 years of investing has this ever happened, where I actually saw them text each other on their screen, and I just emailed them. I had already had these horrible calls about him, and I just said, you know what, this isn't going to work out. I'm going to have to give you your money back. And and I just remember I forwarded it to them and I said, epic fail if this actually happened. And they're like, it did. I'm so sorry, but he was so horrible. Pretty horrible. But anyway, like he was such a headache in just the first week of working with him that I just gave it back. And it sucks to give a check back because it's hard to raise money, especially as a woman. But, I knew, I just sort of wished it out there that, it would come another way, and it has. So that's great.
Has anyone else given back money?
I didn't give it back, but boy, did I have to find somebody to buy someone out. That is my lesson learned, and the biggest fail is taking the wrong money. And I know how hard it is when you're out there raising and somebody's offering you a check, but think long and hard. You are interviewing them if you want them in your company as well. It's really important. So I finally found somebody to buy it out. My favorite part of the story and is the happy ending that they would have gotten 40x their money, but whatever.
That makes me so happy.
I might write those letters too.
I think just to piggyback on that, if you are raising venture capital, learn about fund life stage. So I didn't really know much about what this means, but there's a big difference between being in the early part of your fund and being in the late part of your fund. And some of this is out of your control because stuff will happen, particularly if it's a fund created by corporates. But we had a situation where 2 of our VCs were at the end of their funds at the same time, and it was at the beginning of my company. So it's like it's like if it was the other way around, it's good, but that way round is not good. So then you have to start thinking about, buyouts and things like that are really not in your radar as a founder. So definitely pay attention to not only who is writing you the check, but also where they are in terms of their motivations and where they need to get to as well, and just make sure that you have a similar idea of what that looks like.
Yeah, typically as a company, early stage, you need more money. So make sure you can always interview the investors as well and say, hey, do you save like 50% of your fund for follow-on? Because that's really important. And then what are you going to do when you run out of follow-on money? Like, do you have investors who would continue investing with me? Are you going to raise another fund? What does that look like?
I just want to follow on this point, that it's just a broader, more general point as well, that you should, when you're going in to talk to an investor, you should ask them some questions. It never fails to amaze me how many people just sit down and start pitching. I'm like, well, you don't know that I don't invest in dog food companies, do you? But if they've taken the time to say, can you describe your investment thesis? Can you describe the size of your fund? Can you describe the size of the fund checks and when you'd be prepared to fund? These are questions that everybody's prepared to answer. So you should go ahead and get to know the investor a little bit, just generally speaking, and don't be afraid to do that. we're thrilled to share what we're doing.
And I want to echo that, because I think being in a VC investment relationship, if that's the route you end up going, is like a marriage, right? So you better like the person you're married to. And in sort of your diligence phase, when they're asking you a lot of things, you should be asking a lot of things of them. And if you pick up a weirdness factor or a micromanagement factor or something that doesn't click with you, know that that's not going to go away. It's like a date where something comes up and it's like really bad and weird, but you're like, I'll go on another date. Just don't marry that person, maybe go on another date and see how it goes. And so that's just one of the things. We have wonderful investors, but like some patterns that developed early on with some of our investors absolutely continued. And so, you know, if you don't want to be micromanaged, don't find investors that are micromanagers. The other thing I would share, following up on the point of follow-on funding, is one specific tactic we had, just because we knew it was so hard going out there to raise money early on, is we asked for smaller checks, knowing that once we're in the fund, they have a pool for follow-on funding. We're going to be raising soon. We'll find out how that works out. But that was our explicit strategy where, you know, yes, we know your typical check size might be $500,000, but we'd prefer to take 100,000 and then we'll impress you. We know we'll impress you. We know we execute better than anyone in our space. And then you're kind of in already for the next round. We found that that was actually really effective. And we've had investors that have come to us and said that was a really smart move to do that and to get in early so that you could actually prove yourself to us.
Okay. So now moving on, what is it going to take to grow more women-owned unicorns? And how important is it?
Funding. You know, I think that women-founded unicorns haven't existed for two reasons. Number one, they don't typically get a lot of the funding that would create a unicorn, but also two, they recognize that value can be created without artificially inflating your valuation and raising ridiculous amounts of money that you couldn't possibly put to work. So there's two factors there. They're just so much more reasonable and so much better. I mean, you know, Tanya is cash flow positive. She's amazing and on 2 rounds, right? Which is unbelievable. And, you know, a lot of other companies would just say, heck, we don't need to do that because and there's never ending sources of capital once you get to a certain level, and it becomes very, very tempting to keep raising. And then the funds to make their portfolios look better need to go out and raise again from what I call the greater fool theory at a much larger valuation. So that's why we're seeing a lot of unicorns that maybe don't merit that status.
I'm really personally trying to create a whole lot more of these. I actually make all of my founders, and Anna can tell you, promise me that they'll sell their company for $1 billion. And then I make them promise me that they'll invest part of that back into the ecosystem. Well, where I've gone and raised a fund, and that's the largest barrier to entry for women, it's a lot faster if you have an amazing exit like Cindy here to invest it back into the ecosystem. So I think in order to change the CEO ratio, we need women to have more access to capital, and that's how I plan to solve it.
I'd just add, I think there's just a style shift that needs to happen on some level. Like I meet with a lot of women entrepreneurs, and I'm sure I do it as well. Like I feel like women entrepreneurs pitch really grounded plans and really grounded, attainable, doable visions that they feel comfortable with. And that's not a unicorn pitch. You know, it's a reasonable, good, high growth business, but it isn't. It's a kind of a different headspace. And I think, you know, if you tie it to, I forget what the exact stats were, but it was something like if I'm applying for a job as a woman, if there's like 10 things you need, I won't apply if I don't have 2 of them. Like if I've got 8, you know, I'm not qualified. And I think there's the reverse. I think oftentimes for men, and I think part of it is just getting more comfortable with being a bit ballsier and a bit more bombastic in the size of your vision, and being okay with pitching something that's not 100% baked, that isn't completely able to be backed up and fully substantiated, particularly in the early stages. And I think that's just something that maybe women need to practice a little more. because, I think just maybe intrinsically want to be a little more accurate and want to be able to back it up with stuff and do that. And I think that often makes the idea not sound as big as it is, because it isn't kind of sold through as this epic thing.
I think to piggyback off of that a little bit too, it just goes back to this whole fear of failure. And everyone talks about it when they talk about innovation, fail fast and, learn from your mistakes quickly. But I think that's still, there are few people that do it well. And I think it's just a mindset. I mean, I'm relatively young. I kind of went through university and such during the time when people were really focusing on innovation and teaching innovation and I went to Purdue, which is one of the top engineering schools in the country, and it was awful. I mean, they literally, the school was great, but it's just the way that they teach you how to solve problems, the way they teach you how to do things, the way they grade you, it's all about do it this one way, do not do it this other way. Do not, we would have tests graded specifically, if you didn't do it the exact way they taught you, you could be a genius and have created your own way and got to the same answer, but they would not give you any credit for that, which is absolutely absurd to me. I mean, they're teaching you a mindset that is not real. You don't go out into the workplace and know how to solve the problem. It's preparing you poorly for the real world and for doing well in business and creating good companies and solving problems. And so I think it's a huge mind shift that we have to have in teaching people, as well as, being managers in the workplace, et cetera, about failure is bad when it's on a big scale, but if you fail early, it's good. So encouraging people to have small failures and allowing them to learn from their mistakes and kind of grow and have that mindset so that they can continue to disrupt and be innovative.
I like the rule breakers. I'm passionate about unicorns. You can see why Jesse and I are friends too, because I think the tagline of Pinkubator is make women really, I'll bleep it, rich. And I think that is so important because we talk all the time about women having a voice in the conversation. What women need is power. Money is an element of power. And I think we both can feel very good about that because we know by all of the data that they will reinvest it. They will reinvest it in their community. They will reinvest it in other women and getting them there. But one thing that I didn't hear in this piece about unicorns, how do we get more women there, is visibility. And I'm going back to what actually Erin spoke about and how important it is for a project like that, because if you believe that it is true that you can't be what you don't see, we don't do enough to elevate the visibility of the women who have gotten there and allow that story to be told. And not just the story of, oh, wow, and guess what, they're a woman, but the story of actually the magnificence, I think, that they created in getting there.
So do we need one more? Do we need a woman unicorn, or do we need a flock?
There's actually a few women
More
unicorns. One sitting right next to me. We have Julia Hartz from Eventbrite. There's quite a few billion-dollar companies that are.
Whirlwind.
Yeah, Sunrun was founded by a woman. There's, Cloudflare. There's more than Cisco. Yeah.
But we don't know it. Yeah. And case in point.
Yeah. We need more than one, though. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Duly noted. The next question is exits. When do you start thinking about the exit? And is it different for founders and funders and,
It's my favorite word ever. So I don't know what you... I hope that all my founders are thinking of it early on. There's certain companies that I'm thinking about it more in the beginning than others. Typically products, I'm sort of thinking, okay, we got to flip this in 5 to 7 years and sell it to somebody. And then there's the companies that I'm like, okay, this is going to be a $1 billion IPO company. We need a lot more. I just love them. I don't know what to say about them. It's literally my favorite word.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about exits, and it's the first thing I think about when I look at a potential portfolio company, and it's actually something I discuss too with the founder. I say, are you prepared? Is this something you want to do? Because there's other sources of capital where you don't have to think about an exit, in anywhere from 3 to 6 years. But it's something also that I'm so focused on that I'm planning in the next couple of years to hire someone internally that will be simply focused on exits, and they will be the person that's going to have relationships with strategic investors. They're going to have relationships with the investment banks, being sort of an in-house investment banker that can liaise with the leveraged buyout funds, that can create information flow back and forth so that they can have my companies on their radar when they're ready to make a purchase.
I think it's start with the end in mind, and that's whether you're a founder or you're a funder. You start with the end in mind in a success scenario.
I think you have to go into your pitch meeting with the exit in mind. I think if you're going for venture capital, you're obviously going for an exit. That's the way you make money. And so I think on day one, when you pitch an investor, you have to talk to them about the exit. I think it's also an important reflection point for founders. Like if you want to keep this baby forever, maybe venture capital funding isn't the way to go because you have to be thinking about the exit on day one. The other thing I'll note is, this is where gender bias can come up a little bit. We've definitely had a couple moments, and it's only happened with male investors, when we talk about the exit and timeline that we have in mind for exit and who potential acquirers might be, they say, well, if it's going well, you might just want to run it, right? And we're like, no, that's not the point of it. And we've definitely gotten pushback, and we actually call it out. And we talk about, aren't we talking about a venture capital investment where you want us to have the exit and you want the return, and this is our plan. And I think you have to stand up for what you believe in, but that equally means if having an exit in 5 years is not, if you don't want to leave your company in 5 years, then maybe VC funding isn't the right plan.
I'm glad we're all on the same page here, because I remember originally when we first started this, we had a couple, you always get like really opposing ideas from different people you talk to, and it makes no sense to me ever. But originally people were like, oh, do not ever talk about an exit. That's so like rude and comes across as like, you think you're going to get an exit? Like, you think you're that cool or something? And so then we were always like, wait, so do we talk about exits? Like, seems like you should have a plan in place when you're pitching to these people. But I had a variety of people tell me, like, do not bring up exits. I mean, we did it anyways because we thought it made sense. And you should, for me, at least in the healthcare space, you have to think about that. Like, you have to think about your acquirers and whose pipeline you're going to fit into and how that makes sense, because you have to start talking to them early on, at least getting on their radar so that you can know what they're looking for. But yeah, that's good to hear that everyone's on the same page with this one.
Thank you. At this point, we have some time, and I wanted to turn it over to questions from the audience. First hand was right here.
What's the benefit of being a woman? What have you found in growing your companies, raising money, investors, being an investor? What has been the benefit?
Can I answer? In a word, empathy. Okay, the question was, what is the benefit of being a woman? As an investor, as a founder, in any capacity, and in a word, my answer is empathy. I actually believe it is the superpower of women, is that ability to listen, to problem solve, to implement it. That was certainly my case as I took forward this drug that was somewhat controversial through the FDA. Ridiculous that it was controversial. All of the data had already given us the answer, but the conversation was controversial. And I spent a year doing nothing but listening to women who lived with this medical condition. And when I listened to them, God damn it, everybody was going to listen to them. And then when we started listening to them, we turned to the science. And I think that's just an example, but empathy, I think, will win in terms of the creative leadership, especially as the world goes increasingly to technology, AR, VR, all of these things. We start to remove that human component. Technology has this capacity that takes that away from us. I think women win the game through empathy.
And you stand out right now. Enter the market because you stand out. I was just at Y Combinator, and I do a lot of panels like this, and it starts changing my brain where I'm like, oh, maybe there are a lot of women in tech. And then I go to Y Combinator, and I took a picture of the back of the room, and it was like 250 male investors,
There's a question over here.
It's really upsetting in 2017 to hear that women have no mentors. That's devastating. So I'm just curious why that is and how we change that, because I really think it's a conversation that has to change. And I want to just recognize, part of our mission at MIT Enterprise Forum is to inspire entrepreneurs, all kinds of them, to think some idea that you heard is going to make you take action. The other is we have partners in the room like the WPO and a Paradigm for Parity that are changing the paradigm at the top. Like the top has to change and the bottom has to change. And I just wonder what you think about that within corporate America, because some of you come out of corporate America, some of you never had anything to do with it. But what about corporate mentors who, I had one that said, I don't want to be an entrepreneur, I don't have balls, Tammy, but you have balls, and I'm going to teach you. And he said, I was almost like a proxy. I'm just curious, I had one. Why don't we have mentors, and what is going to change in corporate America that's going to influence the gap change, narrowing the gap?
I actually have a portfolio company that has a solution for that. So one of my companies, Glassbreakers, is a company that matches individuals with mentors within Fortune 500 companies. So that's a start. It's certainly not the end game, but it's definitely a start. And people have said that it's very effective and there's lots of great ROI on it. But then there's also simple things that we can do. It's not just Fortune 500 companies, but everybody in this room could take an action step of the next day or two. If somebody asks you to do something or asks for advice, do it. Actually do it. Instead of saying, oh yeah, I'll get I can't tell you how many times someone said, oh, I'm going to introduce you to that person. And I follow up with an email and no word. And then I follow up with another email and no word. And you just need to just do what you're going to say you're going to do.
I'll just add one thing from my experience is early in my career, I had a really hard time finding female mentors. I really did feel like there was a generation that felt like it was either you or me. And I know that culture is changing, and sort of the mean girls culture is changing a bit in the workplace. I always had male mentors, which is interesting. And I think one of the reasons a lot of women lack mentors is sometimes it takes finding male mentors, and that can be like scary or weird for a variety of reasons. And women are just afraid to ask. And so the thing I would ask the room is, if like you're a guy, like mentor a woman. And if you're a woman, mentor a woman. And don't ever have the attitude of like, it's either you or me. Like, I think there's just like this weird, I think because there have been so few women in leadership, so few women that are visible, that there's some like weird threat that there shouldn't be. And I would just encourage everyone to, like, if you can, just find anyone to mentor, and particularly for women, mentor other women, please.
We have a particularly enthusiastic question earlier.
I don't know. Yeah, the question was, do you think it's because of a lack of confidence for women that they don't necessarily find a mentor? And you mentioned see themselves as a mentor. And you can be 35 and be a mentor to somebody, 50 to be a mentor to somebody. I don't know that answer, but I like the construct that you see that. And I don't know that everybody sees that. I think we look at mentorship like this. Somebody up here is going to help me get there. And I think your mentors are sitting to your left and your right. And if you approach it that way with curiosity, I have outstanding mentors sitting to my left and my right. I learn from female founders who are coming up behind me. And I think that's part of the thought process of it. I don't know about the confidence issue necessarily in seeing yourself that way, but I think if we all started asking one another for help in that process, it would really make a difference. I think we look at it like this.
And one thing I would just add on that really quickly is there is something called imposter syndrome. I just did a talk on it, actually, and it's the idea that you feel like you're going to be found out to be a fraud. And it disproportionately affects high achievers, and even more disproportionately affects women. And so I think you might actually be exactly right, which is women at any success level are still like, oh my God, are they going to find out? Are they going to take like my office away? You know? And so I think we all have to have the confidence that we have a lot, regardless of what age you are. You might be 22, but you can mentor somebody on something. And so if somebody's coming to you to ask you for something, answer the email, do the favor, take the coffee, whatever it takes.
I have a funny story on that too, because I told my husband about this imposter syndrome, and I said, there's this thing called imposter syndrome. And he looked at me and he said to me, that is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard in my life. Imposter is when you put on a hat and a mustache and you walk down the street and try to be somebody else. I said, you might have a point there.
Over here. My name is Elizabeth, and Christina Dolan is the person who put together this event is actually my mentor, whether she's aware of it or not. But I actually have a question that's two-pronged. When you are pivoting your product, what is the best way to determine your valuation? Because your existing sales are not going to be the same as your future sales for the new product. And if you are fortunate enough to have the opportunity of getting capital from one or two larger investors versus a group of smaller investors, how would you weigh the pros and cons of those situations?
I always think it's nice to, just starting with the back end first, I think it's nice to have more investors when you're starting out early, and that's naturally the way it usually works out because there's usually not one person who's going to take the whole round. But I think the more advocates you have and the more people to bounce things off of and the more people to find you customers and to help with your human resources problems and other issues, the better. So I always advocate when people are starting out that they definitely should have not, $1 million, not the jerk too. Don't take the jerk. But to have as many as they can, because they're all out there being advocates for you. And the valuation question is a really tough one, especially when you're at de minimis revenues. That's very, very difficult because what you're trying to do is you're trying to put a number on a story. And I can't be more helpful. Is there anybody else that can be a little more helpful on that?
I mean, there's really no right answer. It's a conversation between you, your investors, your lawyer, the research you've done, the customers you have, your product. It's like a whole, and then also to look at the long-term strategy. You want to sell for $1 billion. Okay, how are you going to get there? Work backwards, because you should sell for $1 billion.
In the back. Can I be the only man to make a point? I like Tanya's point about mentoring. Actually, if I asked everyone to raise their hand who's an MIT alum, I bet it's less than a third of the people here. And to that point, go back to your universities, whether it's the business school or if they have a legal, a law school, they're all trying to come out with mentoring programs.
Great.
And whether or not you went to the school may or may not actually matter. Like MIT has a mentoring program. And the MIT Enterprise Forum invites people that are not MIT alumni. So thus these great forums. But Blackstone, who's familiar with Blackstone's platform right now that connects? Ooh, I only saw a few hands go up. But it's got nothing to do with Blackstone. They're smart. They're trying to bring together all the universities, the mentors, the entrepreneurs, and they're creating a platform that connects all that. So they're hoping one day, when you're a bigger company and can afford their services, great. But right now, they're helping you connect ideas, platform, and early stage. So to her point, yeah, it's great if you meet someone here in the room, but if not, go home tonight and go back to your circle, your network. And then in the next 6 months, make a goal to reach out to 3 other people that are outside your network to the point of if someone asks you to do something, do it. So anyhow, I just want to say that because it's true. It doesn't matter what age or what school you went to. It matters how resourceful you are and how much you go after that idea to go up. Anyhow, that was my 2 cents. Over here.
I'd like, if it's possible, for both Anne and Tanya to talk a little about your businesses. And the reason I'm pointing that out is I make it a point that 50% of everything I buy has to be from a woman-owned business. Yeah. And if you make based on the description of what you're doing, I think everyone in this room can help both their businesses with an introduction. And I think that it's important that sometimes we talk about helping women, but we're actually not using our own pocketbooks, our own decision-making networks in order to influence those buying positions. So I think if more women not just invested in women, but actually purchase products, services, and push other women-owned business, I think we can move this much faster than we're going right now.
I'd also like to say if you're looking for anything to buy, I have quite a few products that you can take a look at on halogenvc.com.
So Work is a marketplace of flexible leadership track work for ambitious women.
we found that over 30% of the most talented women leave the workforce entirely after having a child, and they would have kept working if there was flexibility, except there is no marketplace for flexible work. 80% of companies are willing to do it and have some sort of a program today, but there's no common language. So we created it. We have a concept called the Flexiverse, which are the 6 flexibility products that we break the world down into. These are almost all are W-2 jobs. These are real jobs. That's the difference relative to gig work. These are like a VP of finance, a director of marketing, except now they have a modification. Like you can work from home 1 day a week, or you can time shift your hours, whatever it is. So when companies sign up, and please, any company introductions are wonderfully welcome. It is not an enterprise level solution. It can just be 1 or 2 jobs at a time. You pre-select what you're willing to offer. There's never an issue of, you give an inch, they take a mile. That is not the issue. On the other side of the platform, women and also men, we don't discriminate, apply. You have to be credentialed to be accepted into our platform, and then you can actually filter based on your needs and find the flexibility that is right for you.
So at Shareably, so in 2016, we collected and analyzed over 80 billion moments between consumers in the United States and brand content or celebrity or publisher content. And every single day we collect data for over 200,000 brands, and we transform that into actionable intelligence for marketers when thinking about how to market more effectively inside of the worlds of Facebook and Instagram, etc. And we've surpassed we are an enterprise level solution, although we are kind of thinking a lot about how to service smaller companies too. That's kind of a separate thread. But we're really designed for marketers who want to know how to succeed across emerging media. And when they hear about something like everyone's going to Facebook Live, they need a way to actually check whether everyone is actually going to Facebook Live and whether it's actually worth the investment. And if yes, what does that great content or high-performing content look like? And then secondly, to really take all of the clues and the moments that we all spend as we engage with friends and family and companies on social media to help companies understand their customers better and their prospects better. And we'd love to hear from you.
Right here in front.
Based from your experience of working with VCs,
use the microphone.
Thank you. Based on your experience with working with the VCs, what makes them the best VC? Where do you find them?
I have only worked with angel investors up until this point, so I'm probably not the best person to answer this question.
I can answer a little bit about where to find them. Is what you do is you look at comparable companies. I think you mentioned a little bit about that earlier. So you take a company that's at least similar to yours, and then you go to Crunchbase, and you look up all the investors that have invested in that person before. That's a really good place to start.
Anybody else? Over here, on the aisle.
Can you give an example of a time when you had a big failure or had a loss of motivation, and then how you dealt with that?
Every day.
First step outside the plane.
I don't know if anybody listened to the Startup podcast, but there's like this trough of sorrow idea, and October and November were like our trough of sorrow. It's like everything's going well, everything's going up, you have early traction, then you have like the trough of sorrow. And so we were there in October, November, and we were basically trying to raise a round. Like the round was like not closing out. We like had one investor in particular that was like dragging it out, and that was really challenging. We had issues with like our tech, everything seemed to be going wrong, is a long story short. Honestly, we just kept at it. Like that, to me, there was like no silver bullet. I think the interesting thing is once you decide to be an entrepreneur, you commit. And I think that is the biggest difference. I think had this been a side project, I would have been like, oh, I'm backing out. Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is too hard. But I think once you're in it, you kind of have to get through it. I sort of believe there's like a reverse version of Newton's law, which is whatever comes down must come back up. And so I was like, I'm just going to like ride this out until it comes back up. And it did. And I think part of it was like, there was just like a big hold and weirdness around the election and all of that. And things like December was wonderful for us. And so I think the best thing you can do is not let it affect you personally. There's a great book that's called The War of Art, and it's about separating you from like me from me Inc. And essentially the idea that as an entrepreneur, as an artist, as a performer, you are your product. And so for those people, they're likely to be successful, but also it's just really hard and really personal. And when you hear a no, you think they're saying no to you as a human, but they're not saying no to you as a human. They might like you as a human very much, but it's a no to the opportunity or the situation. And so to me, it's like, I think the best advice I have is just separating you from the business of you and then just riding it out, because it will come back up.
So I think one of the reasons that I was having trouble thinking about what's a big failure or what was a bad time is because I've changed my perspective completely. And I've always been a big fan of Winston Churchill, who said that success is not final and failure is not fatal. So if you keep the highs and the lows in perspective and just try to stay the course and realize that at the end of the day, you're still alive. If you have kids, you still have your kids. You know, well, these other things that happen on a day-to-day basis are just blips. And when you change your perspective also to an attitude of gratitude and you're grateful for everything, you know, even when somebody says no to me for an investment, I say, well, God, thank God they took the meeting, or wow, I really learned this about it. And I try to really find something to be grateful for. And that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I'd just comment. I don't know that I've had lack of motivation. You know, I think that if anything, you want it too much all the time, and you want it to always be happening. You know, so it's more. I mean, I think you have maybe, you know, you go through moments where your energy is kind of gone, where you're like, oh my God, I'm still saying those words. Like, what do they mean? Like, why do I sound so peppy? Like, this is horrible for the other people. So I think it's not that, but I had probably about a year ago just some real mistakes on the hiring front that we went through, and toxic people can really infect your company very, very quickly. And I'm an optimist. Like, I think everyone's great. And it's hard for me to get clear when people are maybe not that great. So I think you go through a moment where you feel like you failed because you should have read the situation better, or you should have, you know, vetted people better, or whatever it is. But I think, you know, what it comes down to is, do you still really believe in what you're building? You know, do you believe that it's your moral obligation for every single person on earth to have this product because it's going to make their lives better and their businesses better? And does that still feel authentic to you and feel right to you? And if it does, you just kind of power through it, you know, because you almost don't have, like, I almost feel like, you know, maybe after your exit, you get to reflect more on what it all means and what about, like, right now, you just kind of go. And stuff gets broken, you just kind of go, because you really don't have the luxury of just kind of luxuriating in, you know, in too much. It kind of loses really precious time when you're building a business.
What else? In the middle, in the maroon scarf.
So, how do you make the decision? Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm usually pretty loud, so that's fine. Okay. All right, that's better. So how do you make the decision when you have a good idea, whether to do it as part of your job, as part of a company? Like, I work for a company right now, I work for an agency. How do you make the decision if you should just create your idea inside of the place where you already work, or if you should take that step and go out and really do it on your own as an entrepreneur?
I think what you guys can add, but I think one of the things you really need to think about is two things. Are you valued for what you'd be doing internally, and are you getting adequate resources? So that would be my response.
I'd just ask yourself, I mean, do you have the stomach for it? But really seriously, it sucks. It's miserable. Like, you're alone.
Don't scare
You have no money. Like, you have no resources. No one's paying you. Like, no, but like, if you look at that and go, okay, I think I can make that work.
So respectfully ignore all of that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. I think if you knew everything that it took to launch something, you honestly probably would never do it. And so it's like, I think it's actually in a way better not to know. I will say, can you really launch it within the company? And if you can, that's wonderful. The reality is if you do something at a company, they own your IP. It is never yours. And so that's just something to be aware of, that it's never going to be your baby. And it might be a great way to start something that way, and then maybe the entrepreneurial bug bites you and then you launch something else in the future. But if you are really passionate about that thing and you want it to be yours, I actually say differently. I say do it.
Well, if you have the stomach for it, gut it out and be an owner, because ownership is the path to freedom, both financial freedom and, frankly, I think creative freedom as well. You're not going to be put into a box of this is how we do it, this is, our standard issue, homogeneity. You get to define it on your own terms. So if you do have the stomach for it, be an owner.
And we'll mentor you. We'll be your mentor.
All right, we have time for one last question. I feel like I've been looking this way all day. So back there in the white vest.
Hi guys, I'm Nicole Spillane, also known as Ginni Rometty, and I am launching a new line, Series Coachella of headphones. And I just wanted to find out if any of you lovely ladies have experience incorporating the philanthropy aspect of the project within the new product sales.
I believe, just in general, I believe for-profit companies, I believe in for-profit companies. Like, nonprofits are very important in a lot of ways, but you can do so much more good as a for-profit company. So I encourage you to focus on that until you are making money. And then you can always do kind of a marketing. I have a couple companies I can talk to you later about, but you can do it in a marketing way where you aren't technically losing money, where it's kind of like your marketing dollars are going into giving away product or what have you. So it actually is like, instead of hiring an internal PR person, for example. I think that's a better way to do it until you're making a significant amount of revenue. But stay for profit. $1 billion.
All right. Well, I know there are a lot of other questions in the room, so we're going to end it there, and we have the space for about another 20 minutes or so. So feel free to talk to the panel. But first, let me be the one to ask you to thank the panel for this. And am I back over to you?
So thank you, everybody, for coming this evening, and thank you to our amazing panelists and incredible questions. And as Amy said, we have about 20 more minutes left for this evening, so continue the conversation, but more intimately. Thank you again for coming.